This video is just to show you, if you were absent from class, how to calculate the equation of the line, or if you just want to have a look back over it if you're not sure about anything. So to calculate the equation of the line, like it says in the notes, we need to know the slope of the line, and we also need to know a point on the line. So all the formulas so far have been asking or using 2 points. So the slope formula, the midpoint formula, and the distance have all been using 2 points on a line. But for this particular type of question, when you're asked to find the equation of the line, you only need 1 point, but you also need to know the slope. And we'll look at, I suppose, in the next few classes, if we don't have the slope, how we might need more than 1 point then. But if you have 1 point and a slope, that's enough to be able to do these questions. So it says find the equation of the line containing the point 3, 2 and whose slope is 5. So first of all, we are going to label like we normally do it. So we have the point 3, 2. So remember, every point has to have an x coordinate and a y. So the x tells you how far you go over horizontally. The y tells you how far you go up or down. And in the first point, we're going to give them a 1 after the x and the y. We don't have a second point, but if we did, it would be x2, y2, but we don't need it for this. And the other piece of information we have is that the slope is 5. And if you remember back to when we were doing slope, we learned that the letter in the alphabet that represents slope is M. So like with the other questions, step 1 is you're writing down what you know and you're labeling it. Next thing is you identify what you're being asked for. So you're asked for equation of the line. So you go to your log tables, you don't have to learn this formula, and you'll find this formula, y minus y1 is equal to m x minus x1. And I suppose to think about what the equation of the line is it's basically just a formula. So like when we were doing patterns, I could list you off numbers in a pattern. So I could say 2, 5, 8, 11 and so on. Or an easier way for me to do that, rather than listing you off every single number that's in a pattern, I could have given you a formula, and we learned to find a formula or an nth term that represented the pattern. And it's the same here. Rather than me listing you off 8 or 9 or 10 points that are on this line, I'm going to actually learn how to come up with a formula that represents the line. And if you think about those patterns formula or an algebraic, an equation in algebra, they need to have letters in them. And that's a really important point, that this y and this x, they have to stay in the formula. You're not substituting those for anything. You only substitute for x and y if they have either a 1 or a 2 after them. If it's just an x or just a y, you don't substitute. So I can go ahead and substitute now. So the y stays the same. y1 is 2, so that's what I've labelled as y1. M, my slope, I've labelled the 5 as m. The x stays the same, and the x1 changes to a 3. Now I can't simplify the left hand side. There's nothing I can do there. I can't take away a 2 from a y. You can't add or subtract letters and numbers, so I leave that as it is. But I can simplify the other side. So I want to multiply 5 by this bracket. So this is going back to your algebra rules. So I multiply 5 by the x, and that's going to give me 5x. And then I go back and I multiply the 5 by the minus 3. So don't forget the minus, and that's going to give me minus 15. Now there's 2 ways that you can finish this question. So I'm going to just split the page here. It depends what way it asks you, and just be careful because the first few questions in the text and test textbook, it doesn't specify what way to leave your answer, but obviously they only give the answer in one form at the back of the book, so you might find your answer will be a little bit off if you give it in a different form. So sometimes they would ask you to leave your answer in the form y is equal to mx plus c, and sometimes they will ask you to leave your answer in the form ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. And all that means is it just tells you how to simplify. So we have y minus 2 is equal to 5x minus 15. So if you're asked to leave your answer in the form y equals mx plus c, that looks really confusing. But I would just look at the left hand side, and what is over there? It's just the letter y. So what we basically want to do is get rid of everything else and just leave the letter y on the left hand side of the equals. So at the minute there's a -2 there. So you, again, back to algebra, how do we get rid of a -2? Well, you just add on 2. But you have to do it to both sides. -2 plus 2 is going to give me 0, so that's going to disappear. 5x, I can't add or subtract that to anything, but I can do the sum -15 plus 2. So -15 add on 2 is going to give me -13. And that's my final answer, because I've left it in this form. So I have only a y on one side, I have something with an x, and then I have a number on its own as well. So if you're asked to leave it in that form, if not, you could be asked to leave it in the other form. Now this way is a bit more tricky. It's just a bit longer. If you have a look here, because again, these might pop up in questions, so it's important that you recognize them. Here, if we have a look, what we notice is that there's actually a 0 on the right hand side. So what that tells us, so don't worry about the left, what that tells us is we need to work towards getting a 0 on the right hand side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get rid of this -15. So I have a -15. I'm trying to get rid of everything that's on the right hand side because I want to bring that down to a 0. So I'm going to just do it one at a time. So to get rid of a -15, the opposite of -15 is +15. So I just add it on and I do it to both sides. So over here we have y, and then you can do the sum. So -2 plus 15 is going to give you 13. And over here, 5x, we can't do anything with that, but -15 plus 15 are going to cancel out and just leave you with 5x. And remember, we're working towards getting a 0. I'm just going to go back up to the top just to finish this. So we have y plus 13 is equal to 5x. I want to get a 0 on the right hand side. So at the minute I have a 5x, so that's having 5x is like plus 5x. So the opposite of that is minus, and I have to do it to the other side as well. So I have y plus 13 minus 5x is equal to 5x take away 5x is just 0. So I've got it. So in the first one, over on the left there, we wanted just the y on one side. So once you had that, you knew you were finished. Over here, you just want a 0 on the right hand side, and once you have that, you're finished. Now I'm just going to rearrange and put the x first, because we normally write them in alphabetical order. So x first, then y, and that is you finished. Now you don't have to do it out both ways each time. Please be careful of that. You'll be asked to find the equation of the line. So the first step, so the bit that I've outlined in green here, is constant. You do that for all of them. And either you do what I've done on the left or what I've done on the right, depending on what way the question tells you to leave your answer. So if it tells you to leave it in the form y equals mx plus c, you do it like the left. And if it asks you to leave it ax plus by plus c equals 0, you do what I've done on the right. If it doesn't tell you, then it is up to you to choose which way you prefer, or you'll learn to judge which way would be easier based on what the rest of the question is asking.